I have been with Lucas for my entire life. I gave birth to and raised our children for him, yet he never once promised me a wedding until his death. It was only when I found a photo that he had always kept in his wallet among his belongings after he passed away that I realized there had always been someone else in his heart. When I was 70 years old, I committed suicide by taking medicine. My 2 sons watched infuriately as I struggled to death in the sun shower. After I stopped breathing, they directly cremated me. Thinking it was unlucky, they didn't even want the urn and directly flushed my ashes down the sewer in the crematorium. And my belongings were thrown outside the house like garbage. When I opened my eyes again, I was back at the time when his first love came to our door with a child. When the 3 of them, father and sons, were accusing me of being heartless one after another and I refused to take them in, I took out the divorce agreement and left that home directly. But I never expected that after I left, they were the ones who broke down. Just because of you, godmother is still lying in the hospital. I don't want a heartless person like you to be my mother. Brother, what are you still talking to that vicious woman for? Dad is here. Hang up the phone and come have dinner quickly. There was unhidden malice in the childish voices. I listened to the beeping sound on the other end of the phone and stared at myself in the mirror for a long time before I realized that I had been reborn at the age of 27, and also reborn on the 3rd day after Olivia came to our door with her daughter. Olivia was Lucas's first love. She left the capital city 7 years ago and there was no news of her. But the day before yesterday, she appeared in front of Lucas with bruises all over her body and her daughter. Lucas wanted to take her to the hospital, but she refused no matter what. Without my consent, Lucas had no choice but to let her stay in our house. I was afraid of Lucas and also felt sorry for the injured Olivia, so I didn't say anything. But when I came back after washing Lucas's and my 2 sons' personal clothes by hand, I found that Olivia was actually sleeping in the marital bed that Lucas and I shared, and her daughter even called me a fool. I am the daughter of the Evelyn group, and Lucas is my child bridegroom. When my mother was pregnant with me, she had a serious illness. I was born prematurely, and my intelligence was a bit lower than that of a normal person after I was born. When my mother was alive, she would patiently teach me how to express myself. But Lucas never liked listening to me. As soon as I spoke, impatience would appear in his eyes. After that, I tried my best not to talk in front of him. After my mother passed away, he was even less willing to listen to me. As time passed, I didn't know how to express myself in front of him. When my emotions erupted, I could only make a scene. That day, I was so angry that I drove them out like crazy. Lucas called me unreasonable, took them and left, and still hasn't come back until now, along with my 2 children, Julian and Ethan. Today is the 7th wedding anniversary of Lucas and me. In my previous life, I cooked a big table of dishes that the 3 of them, father and sons, liked to eat. I originally wanted to call them back, and it could be considered as making peace, but I was hurt by my son's words. In a trance, I fell and hit my head. In my previous life, I didn't understand why the children I carried in my womb for 10 months and raised with great difficulty didn't want to call me mom, but so readily called someone they had only known for 3 days their godmother. Now I understand that bad genes produce bad offspring. In my previous life, it was only after Lucas died that I learned that Olivia was his first love, and even Olivia's daughter was his. Because of my special situation, my mother always felt indebted to me. After my father died in a car accident, my mother was afraid that no one would protect me after she passed away and that others would take all of our property. So she went to an orphanage and adopted Lucas. She originally wanted to find me an assistant, but after seeing Lucas's talent, she changed her mind and made him my child bridegroom. My mother often told me that Lucas would be my husband in the future and my only support, and she asked me to play with him more and cultivate our relationship. After that, I became Lucas's shadow. Lucas is extremely intelligent and received an elite education through a special route. He joined the Evel and grew early on to help my mother manage the company. Olivia was his good sister in the orphanage. After he joined the Evelyn group, he used some means to specially recruit Olivia as his secretary, and the two of them had an affair right under the noses of my mother and me. Lucas hated me. He hated me for separating him from Olivia. I will never forget the look in his eyes when he was on his deathbed. He had always looked at me indifferently with no much emotion, but that last glance before his death was filled with such deep hatred that even the stupid me could feel it. He said, "Evelyn, I originally wanted to treat you as my sister well, but you made me be separated from my true love for several years. I couldn't go back to my home. Now that I'm dead, you should go to hell too." At that time, I didn't understand what he meant. After all, in my perception, we were husband and wife, so our true love should be each other, and our home should be the other's home. It was only when I saw Olivia's photo in his wallet, and when I was driven out of the house by Olivia before I could recover from the grief of losing him, and when all of our property was left to his illegitimate daughter with Olivia, that I understood the truth of everything. It turned out that he loved Olivia, and his revenge had started since Olivia left. Before my mother passed away, he followed my mother's wish and got a marriage certificate with me, saying that he would take care of me for the rest of my life. After that, he coaxed me into giving birth to one child after another, making me focus all my energy on the children and having no time to care about anything else, let alone the company's affairs. As a result, I had no idea when he changed the company's legal person and when he transferred all the property. After he died, I really did, as he wished, go through a living hell. But regarding what he said about me separating him from Olivia, I knew nothing about it at all. Lucas was 2 years older than me. When he was helping my mother manage the company, I was still at school. I only met Olivia once when I went to see him by chance. At that time, I thought Olivia was even more stupid than me. She could burn her hand when making coffee for Lucas, and she could fall into Lucas's arms just by walking. I stopped falling down after I learned how to walk. And when it came to making coffee, my hands were steady when I held the cup. At that time, I just didn't understand why, although we were both a bit stupid, Lucas doted on and took care of Olivia tenderly, while he was full of impatience towards me. I told my mother about my doubts. I thought that Lucas, like most other people, didn't like me. My mother comforted me, saying that it wasn't the case and told me not to think too much. But after that, I never saw Olivia again. Until she came back 3 days ago. When the man has feelings and the woman is willing, it is inevitable that the old love will be rekindled. The leaves on the roadside were swaying wildly in the strong wind. The sky was overcast, with lightning and thunder. Holding the steering wheel in my hand, I still felt a sense of unreality and a trance. I unconsciously touched my belly. If I remember correctly, I should be pregnant with Ava at this moment. In my previous life, my 3 children and I were driven out of the house. Julian and Ethan couldn't stand it after following me for 2 years and went back to find their godmother Olivia. Only my youngest daughter Ava always stayed with me. Although I'm a bit slower than others, I don't want the property my mother left me to be taken away by others. I hired many lawyers, but Lucas had greeted all the law firms before his death, and no lawyer dared to take this case. I sought help from lawyers in other provinces, but they said that an illegitimate child has the right to inherit property, and it would be very difficult to win this case. By the time I had used up more than half of the reserve fund my mother had set aside for me, I still hadn't won the case. Without a house, the schooling of the 3 children became a problem. The capital city is extremely expensive. The remaining money I had couldn't afford a house in the capital city at all. Plus, the children's education also cost a lot of money. So I could only take them to a small county town in a remote area, bought a house there and settled down. There were few job opportunities in the small county town. I was old and a single mother, and I encountered many rejections when looking for a job. Fortunately, I was good looking, and finally I found a job as a waitress in a nightclub. In the eyes of others, being a waitress is a lowly job. In the eyes of my 2 sons, I was also inferior. Julian and Ethan thought that I was a prostitute because I worked in a nightclub, and they hated me even more. The disgust in their eyes was exactly the same as Lucas's. One day when I came home after the night shift, I couldn't find the 3 children and was extremely anxious. I checked the surveillance and found that Julian and Ethan dragged Ada into a taxi. When I was so anxious that I broke down and cried, Ava was sent back by a kind-hearted person. Although she was crying bitterly, she still hugged me with her soft little body and comforted me, saying, "Mom, if the brothers don't want us, we don't want them either. Ava will always be with Mom. Ava is my pearl and also my salvation." Although I didn't win the lawsuit, public opinion was extremely intense regarding Lucas' act of distributing all his property to his illegitimate daughter, and the stock market of the Evelyn Group was greatly affected. In order to please Olivia, Julian and Ethan, after going back, they collaborated with Olivia and smeared me in front of the media. They said that I was the mistress, that my mother used her power to force Lucas to marry me and break them apart. Julian and Ethan also claimed that I made money with my body in a nightclub, and when I got drunk and came back, I would abuse them. They even showed their arms and chests full of bruises in front of the camera. No one would suspect that a child was lying, and that they would frame their own mother like this. After this incident, those who had originally been on my side all switched to Olivia's camp. Together with them, they launched a fierce verbal attack against me, both online and offline. During that period, I was like a rat in the gutter, being loathed by everyone. Those people found my home, sprayed paint at the door, and sent funeral flowers and all kinds of terrifying dolls. Even my daughter was bullied and ostracized at school. During that time, I couldn't sleep all night long. My hands would tremble in the lunch early, I often had tinnitus without realizing it, and I would shed tears unconsciously. I didn't understand what the meaning of living was. Once when I stood on the balcony, if it hadn't been for Ava holding me back, I might really have jumped off. Ava was scared. She seemed to have grown up overnight. She stayed by my side all the time, cooked for me. Even after those people came to our house again, she learned to call the police and protected me behind her like a hen protecting her chicks. Ava is my angel. Looking at the pregnancy diagnosis form showing that I'm 2 weeks pregnant in my hand, I touched my belly and almost burst into tears of joy. In my previous life, I didn't find out that I was pregnant with Avi until a month later. After Lucas coaxed me a few words, I agreed to let Olivia and her daughter Emma move into our villa. While I was not at home, Emma broke the wedding photo of Lucas and me that I had someone specially processed. I was so angry that I almost had a miscarriage due to the bleeding. Not only did Lucas not blame them, but he also blamed me for making a big deal out of nothing and arguing with a child. I will never forget the smug and vicious smiles on Olivia and Emma's faces when I was driven out of the room. In my previous life, with Lucas' protection and the property he left behind, they lived a prosperous life and tried their best to drive me and Ava to the brink of despair. In this life, they deserve to go to hell too. When I came back from the hospital, the lights in the villa were on. I frowned slightly. I remembered that the lights were turned off when I went to the hospital for the examination. Could it be that Luna was back? I parked the car, opened the umbrella and walked towards the door of the house in the heavy rain. As soon as I got to the door, I saw Lucas standing there. He was wearing a neatly ironed shirt with a black suit vest over it, which accentuated his tall and straight waist. His legs under the black suit pants were straight and slender. His face had sharp contours, a handsome and refined appearance. His eyebrows were long and his black eyes were indifferent and distant, with a hint of gloom and coldness. He leaned against the door and just looked at me. I really didn't expect him to be back. In my previous life, although he also came back today, it was me who begged him to come back. On the night when my father had a car accident, it was also pouring with rain and thunder. Therefore, after my father passed away, I was especially afraid of thunder. The condition for Lucas to promise to come back was to let Olivia and Emma move in, and I agreed. But in this life, I don't know why Lucas came back, and I don't want to know either. I averted my gaze, closed the umbrella, shook off the water droplets on it, and after hanging it up, I was just about to pass him and enter the villa when he grabbed my arm. "Where have you been?" His voice was flat, making it impossible to tell his emotions. I was too lazy to talk to him and tried to pull my hand away, but he held it tightly. I looked up and rolled my eyes at him. If your eyes are useless, you might as well donate them. In my previous life, until he died, I never dared to be presumptuous in front of him. I always tried my best to please him carefully. Lucas was obviously taken aback for a moment and subconsciously looked at the wound on my forehead wrapped in gauze. Taking advantage of his distraction, I pulled my arm back and entered the house. Julian and Ethan were playing with racing cars in the children's toy area. Hearing the commotion, they turned their heads to look at me, then snorted and turned their heads back in unison. I glanced at the racing car and immediately recognized that it was bought for them by Olivia. I didn't have any experience in being a parent, so I imitated the way my parents treated me and gave them the best of everything. The car that Olivia gave them couldn't even compare to the worst one I bought for them, but the two of them couldn't put it down. In my previous life, once when I was tidying up the toy room, they couldn't find the car. They beat and scolded me, saying that I had no right to touch the things their godmother gave them. During dinner, they even threw the bowl at me. Although that was something from my previous life, just thinking about it now, my heart still couldn't help but ache. I took a moment to calm down, squatted down and changed my shoes. I was eager to prove Ava's existence when I just came back and hadn't eaten yet. Now I was a bit hungry. After putting my bag away, I went to the kitchen. While I was plating the food, I heard Lucas's voice. Julian and Ethan, come over for dinner. I'm already full from eating at Godmother's place. I don't want to eat. Lucas said sternly. Come here. When I came out with the food, I saw Julian and Ethan reluctantly coming to the dining room, still holding the remote control of the racing car in their hands. I didn't say anything. After putting the dishes down, I went to serve myself some rice and started eating. Outside, the thunder rumbled. The father and his two sons looked at Evelyn, who was eating alone, with subtle expressions. Even Ethan, who was indulged in the racing car, loosened his grip on the remote control for a moment. You know, in the past, every time we had a meal, I would personally serve them rice and coax them to eat the vegetables they didn't like. After a moment of silence, Lucas got up and went to the kitchen. When he came back, his face didn't look good. He said to Julian and Ethan, "You to go back to your room." Julian was a bit dissatisfied. "I still want to play with the racing car that Godmother bought for us." "Go back to your room." Meeting the stern look in Lucas's eyes, the two climbed down from the dining chairs and went back to their room. After the two children left, Lucas sat down opposite me, and his dark eyes just stared at me. In the past, as long as Lucas stared at me like this, I would feel anxious and uneasy, like a child who had done something wrong, wondering if I had done something wrong again. But now, under his gaze, I had such a good appetite that I ate one more bowl of rice. In my previous life, after all the property was left to Olivia and her daughter by him, I had been living frugally and hadn't had such a sumptuous dinner for a long time. Just after I wiped my mouth, I heard Lucas say, "Olivia will be discharged from the hospital tomorrow. She doesn't have many friends in the capital city, and it's not convenient for her to live outside." I asked Luna to clear out a guest room. I threw the tissue in my hand away and interrupted him. "The guest room is cramped. I'll give up the master bedroom. You can arrange the rest by yourself." The master bedroom was the bridal chamber of Lucas and me. As soon as I finished speaking, all of Lucas's words stopped abruptly. A trace of disbelief leaked from his eyes, and he even suspected that he had misheard. "What did you just say?" Perhaps realizing that he had lost his composure, Lucas quickly adjusted his emotions and frowned impatiently, saying, "Olivia was wrong last time, but she's always been simple and didn't think that much. You don't have to keep dwelling on it. She won't eat much living in our house. She's injured and it's not easy for her to raise a child alone. Evelyn, since when have you become so unfeeling?" "Didn't think that much." "Unfeeling?" He sneered and said. "You can deal with Olivia's matter however you like. There's no need to discuss it with me." After saying that, I got up and left. There was a loud bang behind me, followed by Lucas's gritted teeth. "Evelyn, you're really something." I turned around and looked at him. His face was very pale, and the teacup in his hand was shattered on the table. There were several wounds on his porcelain white hand. Perhaps noticing that I was looking at his hand, there was a glimmer of hope in his deep black eyes that I couldn't understand. I was puzzled and too lazy to guess what he was thinking. I just felt a sense of pleasure seeing him lose control of his emotions. Suddenly, I seemed to understand why Lucas wanted me to go to hell in my previous life. Watching the person you hate be unhappy and seeing him in pain is indeed satisfying. I went back to the master bedroom and moved my things one by one to the guest room on the first floor. Lucas just stood at the stairway, watching me move back and forth. Looking at the pair of pillows on the bridal bed, for some reason, my nose still felt extremely sour. Lucas actually treated me well at times. He knew that I was afraid of thunder. Every time there was a thunderstorm, he would hold me in his arms and coax me gently, saying, "I'm here. Don't be afraid. Go to sleep." Since my parents passed away, I've received a little love. So I will always remember even the slightest bit of kindness from others. In fact, I know that no one likes a fool. Even my two sons, who were born after I carried them in my womb for 10 months and are connected to me by blood, don't like me. They despise me and have always been reluctant to call me mom. I sniffled and pulled out the pillow that belonged to me. Just as I reached the door, Lucas blocked the doorway, barring my way. His gaze landed on the silk pillow in my hand, and his voice was as indifferent as ever. "If you move out today, don't come back to the master bedroom in the future." I said okay, and his face instantly darkened. He stood at the door and didn't move. Neither did I. I wasn't really competing with him, it was just that he was simply blocking my way. After a moment of silence, he seemed to admit defeat, saying in a tone that was both helpless and compromising, "Fine, you win, all right, I'll book her a hotel outside." With your temper, and considering Olivia is simple and sensitive, who knows how you'll bully her when I'm not around. I looked at him for a while and instinctively wanted to say something, but in the end, I didn't say anything. Since he didn't move aside, I squeezed past him directly while holding the pillow. Just as I reached the stairway, I heard Lucas's voice, suppressing his anger, "Evelyn, my patience is limited. You should know when to stop." I didn't reply, nor did I look back. I went downstairs with the pillow in my arms. It was already past 2 in the morning by the time I finished tidying up the guest room. Lying on the bed, I suddenly remembered something and got up to go to the kitchen. I guessed that Lucas might come to the kitchen to serve the dishes, so I poured all the food that they like to eat into a box in advance. Given Lucas's character, he wouldn't touch it again. The food was already a bit cold, so I heated it up in the microwave before bringing it out. This is a high-end villa area, and the property management is very strict. Not even a single mouse can get into the community. I held an umbrella and walked to the garbage station. When I reached a few wooden boards, I called out, "Lucky." After a while, a white dog came out wagging its tail. Its chest was low, clearly indicating that it was in the lactation period. It was raining heavily outside, and its fur was a bit wet. It shook its whole body of fur and grinned happily at me. I put the box on the ground and opened it. Lucky smelled the fragrance and came over to eat. The heavy rain pattered on my umbrella. I watched Lucky eating heartily and felt a moment of peace in my heart. I've always liked dogs, but Lucas doesn't. Olivia likes cats, so he likes cats too. I mentioned wanting to keep a dog twice, but he didn't agree. Later, when I was pregnant and had children, I didn't keep one anymore. In my previous life, after Ava graduated, because she was too busy with work to accompany me often, she bought me a small Pomeranian. Small dogs don't need to be walked frequently. They won't tire me out and can keep me company. It accompanied me for nearly 10 years, but it was killed by Ethan. When Ava was 40 years old, she had a serious illness. The doctor said she couldn't survive more than 3 years. She was afraid that I would be left without support after her death, so she went to Frank, Julian and Ethan and said that if they didn't support me, she would expose the fact that they framed me back then and let everyone see how these entrepreneurs treated their own mother. That day Julian and Ethan rushed angrily to our house. Coco sensed their malice and barked at them a few times. Then Ethan picked up Coco and threw it to the ground, killing it right in front of us. Ava and I were terrified that day. After Ava witnessed their cruelty, she didn't dare to mention asking them to support me again. She just hugged me and cried, saying what would happen to me after she died. In fact, I didn't want to live anymore for a long time, but I just couldn't let go of Ava. When I was 70 years old, Ava passed away due to illness. Julian and Ethan were afraid of being criticized by others, so they came back on the day of Ava's burial. After I finished handling Ava's affairs, I had a full meal. Then, holding the doll that Ava loved the most, I sat on the rocking chair in the yard, basking in the sun. After warming my body up, I picked up the sleeping pills that I had saved for a long time and swallowed them all with cold water. My stomach ached like it was being cut with a knife. Just as I closed my eyes, it suddenly started to rain heavily in the clear sky. Ava was most afraid that I would catch a cold. Whenever it got cold, she would dress me warmly. I was afraid that she would still worry about me even if I passed away, so I struggled to crawl back. But it was just a rocking chair, and I couldn't get up even though I used all my strength. When I fell to the ground in a sorry state, Julian and Ethan walked over from the rain holding black umbrellas. I begged them to help me into the house. They were indifferent to my plea and just watched coldly as I struggled in the sun shower. The sunlight stung my eyes, and the cold rainwater took away my body temperature. All my thoughts were blown away by the wind. I came back to my senses, wiped the tears from my face, and watched Lucky finish eating and drinking before going back. The next day, I got up very early. I first went to visit my parents and then flew to High. I didn't get back until the evening. As soon as I reached the door, I heard the laughter and chatter coming from inside the villa. Olivia was wearing a white dress and had her hair styled in a very ladylike way. She looked gentle and serene. Coupled with the large and small bandages on her body, she exuded a strong sense of vulnerability, making people feel pity for her involuntarily. She was the first to notice me. Perhaps she was too surprised, and she choked on her food while she was eating. Seeing this, Lucas naturally reached out his hand to pat her back. The helplessness and doting in his eyes were evident, but he pretended to scold her. "You're already so grown up. How can you be so clumsy when eating?" And Ethan immediately stood up to pour her some water, saying obediently, "Godmother, have some water." Looking at the harmonious scene in front of me, I felt a bit dazed. It seemed that they were the real family. You know, Julian and Ethan not only never poured water for me, but they didn't even say thank you to me. And as for Lucas, if I choked while eating, he would only despise me. After drinking the water, Olivia looked at me timidly, her eyes cautious. Sensing her gaze, everyone in the room turned to look at me. The original laughter and chatter came to an abrupt halt. The warmth and doting on Lucas's face froze like ice when he saw me, and his face darkened instantly. His pitch-black eye swept over my face, and then he infuriately retracted his gaze and continued to serve soup for Olivia. After the two sons snorted coldly, they also turned their heads away. When everyone was ignoring me, it was still Olivia who stood up. She walked up to me and said softly, "Sister, you're back. Lucas has cooked some dishes. Come and have a little bit with us." What she said was just like when you go to someone else's house and happen to catch them having a meal, and then the host says to join them. Lucas grew up in an orphanage, so naturally he can cook. But since he came to the Evelyn family, he hasn't cooked a single meal, let alone cooked for me. Now, the first meal he cooked was for Olivia. I glanced at the table and there wasn't a single dish that I liked. As if she could see what I was thinking, Olivia said apologetically, "Sorry, sister. We thought you wouldn't be back tonight, so." I just glanced at them and then went straight into the guest room. I put down my bag and went to the bathroom to take a bath. After a tiring day, lying in the bathtub, I felt so comfortable that all my pores seemed to open up, and I felt a bit drowsy. When I finished washing up and came out, I saw Lucas standing on the balcony smoking. I didn't know how long he had been smoking there, and the whole room was filled with the smell of smoke. I instinctively frowned. Hearing the commotion, he turned around to look at me. He didn't say anything, just looked at me, sizing me up. I went back to the bathroom and put on my underwear before coming out again. He didn't speak, and neither did I. While I was tidying up the clothes I had changed out of, Lucas's cold voice came from behind me. Evelyn, don't you plan to explain? I stopped what I was doing and looked at him, puzzled. Explain what? Perhaps my gaze was too indifferent. He looked at me and his originally gloomy face froze for a moment. After a while, he said a bit awkwardly, Ethan and Julian almost got late for school today. I sneered and looked at him, saying, so you're blaming me for not waking them up, not making them breakfast, and not sending them to school today. Before he could say anything else, I continued, Lucas, they are not just my children. I can get tired too. Perhaps my tone was too sharp, or maybe it was the first time I had said I was tired in front of him. Lucas was taken aback. His thin lips opened and closed, and after a long while he said, then let the driver send them to and from school in the future. I let out and leaned down. Remembering something, I still said, I'll be very busy in the future. You should pay more attention to the children's affairs. Evelyn's words were like some kind of special instruction, making Lucas feel inexplicably uneasy. Evelyn, what on earth is wrong with you? I didn't say anything more. I withdrew my gaze, picked up the laundry basket, and went to the laundry room. When I came back, Lucas was still in my room. He leaned against the glass railing of the balcony, holding a cigarette but between his slender fingertips. Second-hand smoke is bad for the baby when a pregnant woman inhales it. Thinking of Ava in my belly, I still opened my mouth and said, I don't like the smell of smoke. He paused for a moment, walked to the coffee table, and extinguished the cigarette in his hand. Seeing that he had no intention of leaving, I said, do you have anything else? He looked at me for a while and said, I'm going on a business trip to Country J the day after tomorrow. When I heard Country J I was taken aback for a moment. In my previous life, he also went on a business trip to Country J, but it was 3 months later. At that time, Olivia deliberately provoked me, and I couldn't control myself and slapped her a few times. Lucas saw it. Lucas was extremely angry. After slapping me hard, he took Olivia and Emma to Country J. They were away for 2 months. The two of them had an affair abroad. After they came back, Lucas remained faithful to Olivia and had no more intimate contact with me. Also, fearing that I would bully Olivia again, he secretly bought an apartment for Olivia and her daughter in the extremely expensive capital city. I only found out about this after he died. When Lucas said this, there seemed to be a trace of expectation in his pitch-black eyes. He must be happy to be able to get rid of me, a burden, and have a good time outside with the person he loves. I heard that there are also the biggest and most beautiful meteor showers in Country J. I clenched my fists and let out a faint "oh quoi." After my response, his reaction was a bit strange, and he said again, it will probably take about a month. In my previous life, his assistant also said it would take a month, but to make Olivia happy, he kept delaying. I let out a "muh" sound. Remembering something I said, if you take Olivia and Emma with you, you need to handle things well regarding Julian and Ethan. I may not be able to take care of them. Lucas looked at me in disbelief when he heard my words. Why would I take Olivia and Emma with me? I was also taken aback by his counter-question. Could it be that he didn't plan to take Olivia and Emma there? Before I could react, I heard Lucas say again, also, what do you mean by I need to handle things well regarding Julian and Ethan, and you can't take care of them? Evelyn, what on earth do you want to do? His black eyes stared straight into mine, as if searching for something, or as if scrutinizing me. I pursed my lips and didn't say anything. At this moment, Ethan suddenly rushed in, hugged Lucas's leg, and said, Dad, I want to go to Country J too. Can you take me, my brother, godmother, and Emma with you? Ethan's words were like a knife stabbing into my heart, making it bleed profusely. Over the years, I've been a stay-at-home mom, doing my best for them, but in return, I've received their disrespect, indifference, and contempt. I don't understand where the problem lies. My eyes involuntarily became hot, and the last bit of the bond of blood in my heart was completely severed at this moment. I clenched my fists and tried my best to control my voice to make it sound calm. Ethan and Julian have good grades in their studies, and going to Country J won't delay anything for them. If they want to go, just take them with you. Lucas stared at me for a while and said, "Evelyn, are you serious?" I nodded. He sneered and said, "Evelyn, don't regret it." After saying that, he pulled Ethan and slammed the door as he left. On the day they went to Country J, I personally sent them to the airport. Before boarding the plane, Olivia looked at me with a proud and pitying gaze. She said, "Sister, I heard that the meteor showers in Country J are extremely beautiful. You seem to have said that you wanted to see them before. It's a pity that you're not going this time. But don't worry, I'll take more photos for you then." Telling Olivia that I wanted to see the meteor showers was something that happened 7 years ago. At that time it was the first time I met Olivia. She went to pour coffee for Lucas and me. Wearing high heels, she accidentally sprained her foot and fell into Lucas's arms. I thought she was clumsy in everything she did, so I regarded her as the same kind of person as me and told her everything. At that time, Lucas was also there. I really didn't expect that after all these years, Olivia still remembered that I said I liked to watch the meteor showers. "Oh, and sister, don't worry. I'll take good care of Lucas." When she said this, she deliberately emphasized the word take care. I pretended not to see her provocation and let out a somewhat disappointed sound. She was obviously even more excited. What Olivia didn't know was that while she was excited, I was also very excited. Originally, I thought that I would have to wait at least half a year for a divorce, but since Lucas went on a business trip to Country J earlier, it means that the divorce can also be put on the agenda earlier. Moreover, having just heard Olivia say the word take care with my own ears, I felt even more at ease. After they boarded the plane, I quickly called William. Perhaps the excitement in my tone was too obvious. The other side let out a soft laugh, and then a female voice, which was a bit lower than normal, came through. "Okay, I'll arrange things in Country J right away." After finishing discussing the main matter, I asked her, "When will you arrive in the capital city?" "Around 5 o'clock in the afternoon." "Okay, I'll pick you up when you arrive." After hanging up the phone and leaving the airport, I asked the driver to take me to the company. The last time I went to High is High, I went to find William. In my previous life, her law firm ranked among the top 10 in the industry. It focused on serving women, helped thousands of women get out of difficult situations. When she was 70 years old, although she was more behind the scenes, she was still a powerful figure in the business world. That year, Ava had a serious illness, and all our savings were spent on treating her illness. She wanted to give up the treatment. I was at the end of my rope. After seeing her in the news, I flew to High as High and waited for her for almost more than a month. After she met me and heard about my experience, she came out of retirement to help me with the lawsuit. Because the time was too long and there was no substantial evidence, and also because all of Lucas's operations were legal and compliant, she spent a lot of effort and helped us win back 20 million yuan. Although 20 million yuan was just a drop in the ocean for the Evelyn Group at that time, for us, it was a life-saving straw. In court, when I saw her, though her hair was gray, she was still extremely powerful. All I felt in my eyes was envy. I really wanted to be like her. I have looked into William's past. Since she was a child, William witnessed her mother being beaten by her father. Her mother wanted to get a divorce but couldn't for various reasons until she was beaten to death. But at that time, she was young. The parents of both sides were afraid that she would have no one to take care of her, so they signed a letter of understanding, and her father didn't go to prison. Her father treated her badly. He even accepted money from an old bachelor and wanted to marry her off. It was she who found a way to escape. After she became a lawyer, the first person she sent to prison with her own hands was her father. Both she and Lucas can be said to have risen from the bottom, but they are different. Lucas had the support of the Evelyn group, while she relied entirely on herself. There is a kind of perseverance in her that nothing can defeat. Lucas's assistant, Sophia, wasn't surprised that I came to the company to check the accounts. After all, I check them every year. Before my mother passed away, she told me to check the company's financial statements and assets every year. I have always remembered my mother's words and checked them every year. But there were basically no problems with the company's financial reports every year. As a result, in my previous life, I didn't even know when Lucas transferred the property. But William saw the problem immediately. She flipped through the account books a few times and frowned, saying, "There's no point in looking at this. Ask the finance department to bring the internal accounts over." I was stunned. Internal accounts. William frowned even deeper. "You don't even know that your company has internal and external accounts. Is this what your husband shows you every year?" I nodded a bit slowly. Some companies have two sets of account books. The external accounts are for outsiders to see, and only the highest level managers of the company have the authority to view the internal accounts. The main business of the Evelyn Group is making new energy vehicles. In recent years, under Lucas's management, it has squeezed into the top 50 in the industry. Even with that external account, the annual profit is nearly 10 billion yuan. When Sophia heard that I wanted to check the internal accounts, she was taken aback for a moment. When she looked at William, there was a hint of vigilance in her eyes. Then, I heard her say in a matter-of-fact tone, "Madam, to view the internal accounts, you need Lucas's permission. Lucas is still on the plane now. I'll inform Lucas as soon as he lands." I sneered, "What? As the chairwoman of the company, don't I even have the right to view the company's internal accounts?" Sophia responded calmly. "Madame naturally has this right, but the group." Before she could finish, I directly made an internal call and the director of the finance department. William, her team, and I checked the company's finances. It took nearly half a month to finish the inventory. Except for making a call to me and getting very angry on the day I checked the internal accounts, Lucas didn't call me again. I could often see in the moments that he took Olivia to attend various business conferences and banquets. Olivia was holding his arm, smiling brightly. They made a good-looking couple, a perfect match. In his spare time, he would take Olivia and the 3 children out to play. He would take them to watch the meteor shower and make wishes under the sky full of shooting stars. If it were in the past when I saw these photos, I would definitely be sad and then call him, trying every means to make him come back. But now, I don't feel much about it. I even think that Olivia is somewhat useless. It's been more than half a month, and how come there's still no progress between the two of them? The detectives that William hired, apart from taking photos of them holding hands at the banquet, hardly captured any other intimate actions. Even the surveillance cameras that the detective installed in Lucas and Olivia's hotel suite didn't record any behavior that crossed the line. After Lucas arrived at the hotel, he would stare at his phone for about 20 minutes, as if waiting for a message or a call from someone. I don't know what he's thinking. His lover is right beside him, yet he still has the mind to think about other things. In a flash, more than 20 days have passed, and there's still no sign of anything happening between them. Just when I was so anxious that I wanted to come up with some underhanded tricks, the two of them finally made some progress. Olivia helped the dead drunk Lucas into his room. William looked at the scene on the surveillance screen, was silent for a while, and then looked at me and said, "Do you want to avoid suspicion first? After all, for someone you once loved, if you really have to see the other person, I guess it won't feel good in your heart." I shook my head and stared at the 2 people on the screen. As soon as the hotel door closed, Lucas directly pressed Olivia against the door and kissed her. Olivia in the camera was obviously taken aback for a moment, and then responded passionately. Like dry wood and blazing fire, the 2 of them kissed inseparably. When the 2 of them reached the bed, their clothes were already scattered all over the floor. Just at the crucial moment, Julian and Ethan somehow appeared in front of Lucas's room. I just secretly thought it was bad, and Julian had already swiped the card to enter the room. When the two of them saw the two people hugging each other naked, they started shouting. Lucas was awakened by the sharp sound and immediately pushed Olivia away, frantically looking for his clothes. Julian ran into the corridor and called me. I hesitated for a while, then swiped to answer the call. On the other end of the phone, his voice was filled with a crying tone and helplessness. It was the first time I heard him call me Mom so straightforwardly. Mom, come to Country J quickly. Fly over right now. I looked at the computer screen and asked lightly, what's wrong? Julian on the other end of the phone was already crying, saying intermittently, Dad, with God. That bad woman. Are hugging each other naked. Come quickly, come right now. Bad woman? I really didn't expect that one day Julian would call his favorite godmother a bad woman. Lucas was wearing a pure white robe and came out to coax the crying Julian in the hotel corridor. Julian wouldn't let Lucas get close at all. In the room, Ethan was punching and kicking the naked Olivia, and Olivia reached out her hand in an attempt to hold him down. In the high-definition camera, there were dense hickeys on Olivia's fair neck. Looking at this farce, I said, What are you talking nonsense about? You must have seen it wrong. I'm busy right now. I'll hang up first. Have a good time. After saying that, I hung up the phone, looked at William, and said, Is this considered evidence? When I saw William nod, I let out a heavy sigh of relief. About half an hour later, another assistant who accompanied Lucas came and took Ethan and Julian away. Lucas walked in and looked at Olivia, who was disheveled. I don't know what the two of them said, but Olivia looked wronged. After Olivia left, Lucas sat on the leather sofa. His reaction was different from what I expected. I guess he still hadn't calmed down. He looked a bit dejected. He picked up a cigarette again, lit it, but didn't smoke it. He just held it between his fingertips. His black eyes stared at the phone on the table without moving, as if waiting for some kind of judgment. Probably because there were no outsiders around, he didn't try to hide his emotions anymore. As time passed, I could feel his unease and irritability. The cigarette between his fingertips gradually burned out as time went by. Lucas reached out his hand numbly, extinguished the almost burned out cigarette in the ashtray, and then let his hand hang down limply. Those sharp black eyes that were always so piercing were now filled with confusion, unease, and a certain deep despair. After a long time he called me, but I didn't answer. He called me 5 times in a row, and I still didn't answer. Suddenly, a message from him popped up on WeChat. Evelyn, answer the phone. Now that I have the evidence, I'm too lazy to talk to him. I directly blocked his phone number and contact. He made another call and then sent a message. I guess he realized that I had blocked him, and he was so angry that he threw his phone on the ground, smashing it into pieces. I saw a red dot there and clicked it open. Then I saw a selfie of Olivia. The hickeys on it were clearly visible, and the caption read, Brother doesn't know how to be gentle with a beauty at all. As soon as I saw this, I knew that she had set it to be visible only to me. In my previous life, she often did this and posted a lot of moments that were only visible to me. When I took screenshots and confronted Olivia and Lucas about it, Olivia said that I had someone Photoshop them. She also said that if I couldn't tolerate her, she would just leave and that there was no need to slander her innocence. Lucas believed her and then turned around and accused me of being vicious. I'm no longer interested in paying attention to Lucas's emotions. I turned off my phone and started drafting the divorce agreement with William. I guess God looks down on that scumbag Lucas. The next day, on his way back after negotiating the last cooperation, he had a car accident. The car crashed into the railing and fell into the river. Julian and Ethan encountered such a major event for the first time, so of course they were anxious. They called me many times, but I didn't answer and didn't care. After being rescued, Lucas was in a coma in the hospital for a week. Just when I was sorry that I hadn't bought insurance for him, Lucas woke up. After he woke up, he seemed to be knocked silly. He kept staring at the ceiling, and he ignored Julian and Ethan when they talked to him. Julian was so anxious that he called me again, but I didn't answer. When the doctor came to examine him, he also seemed to be dead, keeping that posture without moving. After I went to a meeting and came back, I received a call from the detective, saying that Lucas had suddenly pulled out the infusion to bond his body and disappeared. I reviewed the surveillance footage before Lucas disappeared. He roughly pulled out the needle on his hand and didn't deal with it. Blood flowed down his hand to his fingertips and then dripped onto the ground. Julian and Ethan called me again, and even his assistant called me. I was annoyed and directly set up automatic call blocking for calls from Country J. Sophia also received the news and rushed into my office. "Madam, Lucas is missing in Country J." I didn't even look up and casually replied, "He's such a big person. He won't get lost." Probably because I looked too calm, he frowned and said, "Madam, the two young masters are very worried and keep crying. Do you want to call and comfort them? They'll stop crying when they're tired of crying. Sophia, is there anything else?" Sophia seemed to be at the end of her patience and said to me, "Chairman, you didn't care at all when Lucas had a car accident in Country J. Now you don't care either when the young masters need you. Do you have no heart? All of Lucas's hard work in the past few years has been wasted." After saying that, he went out to communicate with the assistant there to solve the problem. I didn't say anything and directly sent the dismissal email to the Human Resources Department. Whether Lucas is missing or dead doesn't have much impact on me. It will just most likely affect the stock of the Evelyn Group. I called William in and thought about how to deal with the situation externally if Lucas was missing. Just when everyone was so busy dealing with Lucas's disappearance that they were at their wits' end, when I got home, I saw him wearing an apron and busying himself in the kitchen. On the dining table, there were all the dishes that I like to eat. I was taken aback for a moment and almost suspected that I was hallucinating. He wasn't in a good state. There were bloodshot eyes in his beautiful eyes, as if he hadn't had a good sleep for a long time. When he saw me, he froze for a moment, and then took the initiative to say somewhat awkwardly, "You're back." I let out a soft sound. My eyes involuntarily glanced at the hospital gown he was wearing, not understanding what he was up to. When he saw me looking at the hospital gown he was wearing, his black eyes suddenly lit up, and he looked at me with some expectation and said, "I had a car accident in Country J." His eyes were too strange. In both my previous life and this life, I have never seen him with such an expression. Eager, aggrieved, and with a hint of seeking concern, it was very much like a little dog begging its owner for attention and a pat. I frowned, feeling a bit uneasy in my heart. I let out an "oh" sound and didn't say anything more. I sat at the dining table and looked at the dishes in front of me. "Is there anything else you want to eat? I'll make it for you." The way Lucas talked to me was almost gentle compared to his previous indifference. In the past he only used this tone when talking to Olivia, and he was cold to everyone else. I shook my head and couldn't help but sigh. "This is the first time you've cooked for me." He pursed his lips and was silent for a while before saying, "I'll cook whatever you want in the future." Whether in the previous life or now, hearing these words from Lucas's mouth was terrifying to me. I reasonably suspected that he knew I had discovered his affair with Olivia and wanted to take the initiative and secretly kill me to seize my property. I squeezed the phone in my hand. To avoid any further complications, I shook my head and said, "No, Lucas. We don't have a future together, do we?" I saw Lucas visibly stiffen for a moment, and then he seemed to turn a deaf ear and said, "I remember there's pineapple in the fridge. I'll make sweet and sour pork with pineapple for you." As he spoke, he raised his foot to leave. I didn't understand the point of his pretending not to understand, so I said mercilessly, "No matter how much you cooked, I won't eat it. I think it's dirty." Lucas froze instantly, and his handsome face turned deathly pale. He looked at me and said in a hoarse voice, "Evelyn, I'm not dirty. Julian called me and said that you were hugging Olivia naked." "I didn't. Evelyn, please listen to me." As Lucas spoke, he reached out to grab my hand. I stepped back in disgust and said coldly, "Don't touch me." Meeting the disgust in my eyes, he was suddenly at a loss. The air was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. I was sitting, and he was standing. After a long silence I said, Lucas, let's get a divorce. Evelyn, no. Let's not get a divorce, please. Lucas's voice was low and hoarse, filled with pleading and even a hint of humility. Humility. I had never thought that Lucas would be associated with the word humility. Even when he was in the orphanage, he had a strong sense of pride. I thought of the astronomical figures in the internal accounts and Lucas's talent. May genius like him naturally had the capital to be proud and wouldn't feel inferior. Not to mention that he was so humble in front of someone he considered an enemy, someone who he thought was as low as dust in his eyes. His eyes quickly turned red, and he almost choked up as he said, Evelyn, I'm a jerk. You can hit me, scold me, do whatever you want, but please don't divorce me. Please. His pain didn't seem to be fake. I couldn't understand. Clearly, marrying Olivia was something he had dreamed of in his previous life. Lucas, I know that you've always loved Olivia. Don't you want to marry her and be with her openly until old age? Remembering something, I added, regarding Olivia, our Evelyn family is sorry to you. If we hadn't adopted you, you might not have separated from her. If I hadn't complained to my mother back then, you two wouldn't have been apart for 7 years. William told me that at such a critical moment, we couldn't push them too hard. The three of them have no conscience. If we make them angry, they might hurt me and Ava, and it would be a loss not worth the gain. Before the goal is achieved, while he feels guilty, it's okay to press on the advantage and say some soft words. Thinking of this, I continued, moreover, Ethan and Julie and don't like me as their mother. They like Olivia more. Even if we get a divorce, it won't have any impact on them. Every word I said was carefully considered, and I guessed they were the words he would like to hear and what he wanted. But I didn't know which word suddenly hurt him. Lucas's tears fell, and his dark eyes were filled with deep pain and despair. He covered his face with his hands and kept saying sorry over and over again. His emotions were really beyond my expectation and even unreasonable. Could it be that he damaged his brain in the car accident in Country J? Afraid that he might do something drastic, I said, Lucas, you should still remember the agreement you signed before marriage. I'll give you 3 days to think about it. If we get a divorce by agreement, I'll give you 20 million yuan. If we go through a lawsuit for divorce, you won't get a penny. If you've made up your mind, then. Before I could finish speaking, Lucas's next words made me feel as if I had fallen into an ice cellar. I saw him raise his head, his eyes red, and he looked at me and said, Evelyn, I'm back too. This light sentence made me dizzy. The person in front of me overlapped with the person who hated me so much in my previous life at that moment. Lucas turned into a ferocious evil spirit in front of me. I couldn't breathe instantly, and my whole body was shaking. I wanted to call William, but my vision started to blur, and I heard Lucas's anxious voice in my ear. Evelyn, Evelyn, why are you bleeding, Ava? When I woke up again, I was in the VIP ward of the hospital. Lucas was by my bedside. I didn't look at him, but my hand instinctively touched my belly. Lucas seemed to understand my worry and said, Ava is fine. You haven't eaten anything from last night until now. Have some porridge first. As he spoke, he handed me a bowl of soft and mashed lean meat porridge. I pursed my lips and didn't take it. He let out a soft sigh and said, even if you don't eat, Ava needs to eat, right? When he mentioned Ava, I frowned instinctively and said coldly, Lucas, you have no right to mention her. If he had left me even 1% of the property in the previous life, Ava wouldn't have had to suffer so much with me. I hated Lucas and also hated myself. I hated myself for being stupid, unable to keep the family property, being deprived of everything, and being driven out of the house. Lucas seemed to suddenly lose all his strength. His fingertips trembled, and he almost couldn't hold the bowl steady. He said hoarsely, I'm sorry. The words I'm sorry are the most useless in the world. I didn't react. He continued, after I died in the previous life, I always stayed by your side. Before he could finish, I sneered, God has been kind to you. Not only did it fulfill your last wish, but it also allowed you to witness everything with your own eyes. Lucas, watching me being abandoned and betrayed by my own sons, being stepped on by Olivia, being cyberbullied into severe depression, becoming a pariah that everyone condemns, and Ava being bullied and ostracized, watching us being dragged into hell little by little. You must be very proud, right? Lucas's face was as pale as paper, overwhelmed by guilt, self-blame, and regret. He said despairingly, Evelyn, I didn't listen to him anymore. I picked up my phone and got out of bed. Lucas carefully tried to help me, but I slapped his hand away mercilessly. Get away. Don't touch me. I went into the toilet and sent a message to William. Since Lucas is back too, and now that he hasn't transferred the property yet, he naturally won't agree to a divorce. Then, there's only one way to go next. Just as Evelyn entered the bathroom, Lucas's phone rang. He looked at the caller ID and saw that it was his assistant in Country J. As soon as he answered the call, the assistant's anxious voice came through. Lucas, something's wrong. What happened? Didn't you ask me to buy jewelry for Miss Olivia and Emma last night? They wore them out today and were kidnapped on the street. The kidnappers called and demanded 500 million yuan. Lucas's voice was cold and showed no surprise, as if he had expected it. He said, Have you called the police? Not yet. The kidnapper said that if we dare to call the police, they'll kill the hostages. When something like this happens, what are you waiting for if you don't call the police? We should trust the power of the police. Call the police and ask them to contact her husband, by the way. It's more appropriate for her family to handle this kind of thing. The assistant was obviously stunned for a moment and didn't react. Huh? Is there still a problem? There was a pause on the other end before saying, I see, Lucas. When Lucas hung up the phone and came back, he didn't see Evelyn. Thinking she was still in the toilet, he sat on the bedside of the accompanying bed and started ordering food for Evelyn. She was still pregnant with Ava and couldn't not eat anything. After ordering, more than 10 minutes passed, and she still didn't come out. Lucas, feeling worried, walked to the door of the toilet and tentatively called out, Evelyn, are you okay? There was no response from inside. Lucas felt an inexplicable unease and said, Evelyn, if you don't say anything, I'm going in. Lucas waited for 30 seconds, and there was still no response. He rushed into the bathroom, but Evelyn was nowhere to be seen. Lucas never expected that Evelyn would disappear right under his nose, as if she had evaporated from the world. No matter how hard he searched, he couldn't find her. If she hadn't gone through the divorce litigation process as usual and also made a property public announcement, he would have thought she had really gone missing. Evelyn was determined to divorce him. Now, he didn't have the slightest bit of trust in her heart. She made the property public announcement because she was afraid that he would transfer the property. If he hadn't come back too, she probably wouldn't have even told him that she was pregnant with Ava. Lucas felt as if he had swallowed a bitter gall. From his throat to his heart, everything was bitter. But he couldn't blame anyone. Everything was his own doing. In his previous life, the proud young man didn't know what love was. He always thought that he loved Olivia. He hated Evelyn for complaining to her mother back then, for separating him from Olivia, and for forcing Olivia to leave. This made Olivia had no way out but to marry a 60-year-old man while pregnant with his child. She was also abused at home and endured so many years of gossip with Emma. So he also wanted to make Evelyn suffer. Probably because of this obsession, he didn't leave immediately after his death but always stayed by their side. He witnessed with his own eyes that after he told her to go to hell, her clear eyes were full of shock and confusion, and then she cried bitterly after his death. When Evelyn's mother passed away, she also cried so sadly that her eyes were almost too swollen to open. She was really stupid and slow. For so many years, she didn't feel his hatred for her. After he was buried, she seemed to have aged a lot. Even many of her hairs turned white, and she became silent. It was what he had expected that she and the 3 children were driven out of the house. He hated Evelyn and didn't have much affection for the 3 children she gave birth to. The reason he had children with her was just to make her focus on the children and bother him less. Therefore he neglected the education of the 3 children. Influenced by him since childhood, Julian and Ethan took Evelyn's efforts for granted, disrespected her, and even looked down upon their mother. In fact, he knew all of this but just didn't bother to care. She was the daughter of the Evelyn group and the nominal chairwoman as well as Lucas's wife. Although others secretly laughed at her for being a fool, when they met her, everyone treated her with respect. The grievances she suffered were not even 1/10 of what Olivia had endured. After Ava was born, she always clung to Evelyn more. He transferred his hatred to Ava and always thought that Ava was ungrateful. Ava was not as well behaved and obedient as Emma, and he disliked her even more. Perhaps Ava also felt his dislike for her, and didn't get too close to him either. In fact, he left 2 wills. One was to leave all his property to his daughter Emma with Olivia, and the other was to give the 3 children 20 of the shares of the Evelyn group if they didn't want Evelyn and wanted to come back. He hated Evelyn and wanted to see her deserted by everyone and watch her being dragged into hell little by little. But when he saw her being driven out of the house, losing one lawsuit after another, and being unable to survive in the capital city, he wasn't as happy as he had imagined. Even when she lost the lawsuit and secretly cried alone in the corner, he would feel his chest stuffy and have difficulty breathing. Evelyn had been brought up in a wealthy family since childhood and didn't have a strong material desire. She cried not because of the property but because she couldn't keep what her mother left her. It was him who took advantage of her stupidity and the fact that no one stood up for her after her mother passed away. After Olivia said that Emma was his child, he began to transfer the property. He thought that Emma and Olivia had suffered so much, and this property could be regarded as compensation for them. However, later, everything he did became a boomerang and stabbed him back. Mo was not his child at all. He thought that he had slept with Olivia on the same bed when he was drunk, but in fact, nothing happened at all. He thought that Olivia was kind and simple. In order to achieve class transcendence, she seduced a married 60-year-old man. To move up in society, she casually found several men and slept with them for a few nights to get herself pregnant. Relying on the child, she successfully squeezed out the original wife and became a wealthy lady. But later, when the rich man found out that the child wasn't his, he started to abuse her at home. With no way out, Olivia came to him. He blindly believed in Olivia and believed everything she said. Whenever there was a dispute between Olivia and Evelyn, he would stand on Olivia's side without hesitation. Lucas couldn't imagine how many grievances Evelyn had suffered over the years. She just didn't know how to express them, or she knew that even if she told him, he wouldn't stand up for her and be on her side. He was a failed husband, a failed father, and a failed person. Evelyn's mother adopted him and gave him the best education, but after she died he bullied her most cherished daughter so much. He was a complete failure. He regretted countless times why he was so heartless to her. If he had shown even a little mercy to his wife and left her some protection, she and Ava wouldn't have suffered so much. Lucas's thoughts were in a mess, and his heart started to ache again. In fact, Olivia was right. He had already fallen in love with Evelyn. So from the time he left the orphanage until they met again, Olivia had been imitating Evelyn's every move, and he also fell in love with Olivia as he wished. Because he knew that the real Olivia wasn't stupid. He just subconsciously resisted the fact that he had fallen in love with a fool. If only he could have recognized his own feelings earlier. Perhaps everything would have been different. He originally thought that his ability to come back was a chance given by God for him to make up for it, but it seemed that everything was too late. Lucas looked around the deserted villa and realized that the house had become much emptier. In the past, there were photos of the family of Frida. She had someone photoshopped everywhere in the house. At that time, he sneered at them. Now, the photos were gone, and his heart suddenly felt empty. Couple slippers, couple cups. She had replaced everything related to him. Lucas got up and staggered upstairs into the master bedroom. The huge wedding photo that she had someone photoshopped and hung above the bed was also gone. Bit by bit, everything belonging to them was removed by her, just like the love she suddenly took back. Lucas reached out and opened the cabinet. He remembered that there was a safety bracelet she had knitted for him by hand, but he had never worn it and had always thrown it in the cabinet. But now, the bracelet was gone. Instead, there were 3 condoms inside, with the jasmine scent that Evelyn hated the most. And Olivia liked jasmine the most. He didn't buy these, and Evelyn definitely wouldn't buy them either. I never needed Luna to touch the birth control products. The only one who could buy and put them here was Olivia. Lucas's face turned pale, as if something was choking his throat, and his breathing began to become difficult. After I left the capital city, I came to Yancheng. This was where my grandmother grew up. It has beautiful scenery and a slow pace of life, which is very suitable for recuperation. I was here to take care of my pregnancy. In my spare time, I would go to the cemetery to visit my grandparents. William often called me to tell me about the situation in the capital city and the Evelyn group. Lucas had gone to her many times to inquire about my whereabouts. It was said that Lucas didn't seem to be doing well. He had been sent to the emergency room several times after drinking. When I heard that, I said, his first love just had an accident abroad. Naturally, he's feeling bad. Olivia was raped and then killed in Country J, along with Emma. Their bodies were cut into pieces by the kidnappers and thrown into the septic tank. This news even made it to the trending topics. When William heard my words, he was silent for a long time and then changed the topic. When I was 5 months pregnant, Lucas finally compromised and agreed to the divorce. He left the house with nothing but the 2 children, but the condition was that he wanted the right to visit Eva once a week. Once a week was too frequent, and I didn't agree. After another half-month of negotiation, he agreed to my proposal of once a month. On the day the plane landed, William came to pick me up, and Lucas, Julian, and Ethan also came. Although we hadn't seen each other for only a few months, they seemed to have changed a lot. Julian and Ethan had become quieter and more polite. When they saw me, they even called me Mom, and the way they looked at me was no longer one of contempt but respect. As for Lucas, he had lost a lot of weight. Although he was neatly dressed, the exhaustion and vicissitudes in his eyes couldn't be hidden. Olivia's incident had a great impact on him. Sitting in the car without me having to say anything, William said, "Lucas, go to Huizhou Junting." "Thank you." Huizhou Junting was in the North District. Lucas changed the direction and drove towards the North District. During the whole journey, the car was very quiet, except for Lucas's unnecessary greetings. For example, how was the child, whether there was morning sickness, and how well I slept. Julian and Ethan were sitting in the back. I caught them peeking at me several times, or more precisely, at my belly, with curiosity in their eyes. When they found me looking at them, they awkwardly shifted their eyes away. Finally, Julian couldn't hold it in and spoke first, trying to be cute. "Mom, Dad said that my brother and I will have a little sister. When she's born, my brother and I will play with her. We'll take good care of her and never let anyone bully her. By the way, what's the little sister's name?" Take good care of her? In the previous life, the ones who bullied David the most were these 2. I pursed my lips and interrupted him. "After your dad and I get divorced, I'll take good care of her. You're still young, so just take good care of yourselves." Mom daring to divorce Dad? There was obvious shock in Julian's voice, as if he had just heard the news. I paused for a moment, looked at Lucas who was driving, and said, "Didn't you tell them?" Lucas tightened his grip on the steering wheel and said, "I didn't have the time. The court session is tomorrow, and he said he didn't have the time." Julian and Ethan started crying. Just like many children, when they knew their parents were going to divorce, they cried their hearts out. "Mom, we don't want you to divorce Dad." "Is it because Julian and Ethan weren't good that you want to divorce Dad?" "Mom, from now on, Julian and Ethan will be good. We'll do whatever you say. Please don't get divorced." If it had been before, seeing them cry so sadly, I would have felt sorry for them and gone to comfort them long ago. But now, I was indifferent. Just as they had stabbed me in the back to please Olivia, and watched me and Ava suffer, and watched me die in the sun and rain without batting an eye. The mother-child bond between me and them should have been broken in the previous life. The car stopped in front of Huizhu Junting. When I unfastened my seat belt, Lucas said, "Do you need anything? I can help you. I'm getting off here." He seemed to think he had misheard. Even Julian and Ethan, who were still crying, looked at me and sobbed, "Mom, aren't you going home?" "Yeah, I'm not going back." When I pushed the car door open, I heard Lucas say in a hoarse voice, "Evelyn." It was just 2 words, but it seemed to contain 1,000 words. I paused for a moment but didn't look back. On the day of the court session, the judge asked me, "Ms. Evelyn, are you sure you want to give up the custody and visitation rights of the 2 children?" I looked at the 2 pairs of eyes in the audience that were obviously nervous and expectant, and nodded without hesitation. "I'm sure." After the court session ended, Julian and Ethan immediately stood up and ran towards me. Because they were running in a hurry, Ethan fell hard. He landed on the ground and pleaded, "Mom, don't leave us. Don't abandon me and my brother." Julian also looked at me with the same pleading eyes. I just glanced at them and then infuriately looked away. After packing up the documents, as soon as I stood up, Lucas grabbed my hand. He couldn't bear it and said, "They're still young. Do you really want to abandon them?" I didn't want to listen to what he had to say. I just looked at him and said, "Lucas, you should haven't forgotten how they treated me in the previous life, right?" Lucas's face twitched, and his grip on my hand gradually loosened. After a long while, he said in a hoarse voice, "I'm sorry. It's my fault that I didn't teach them well." I didn't say anything more, and I didn't stay any longer. I just raised my foot and left. "Mom, don't abandon us." Behind me, there were the heart-earned cries of the 2 children. I clenched my fists, suppressed my instinct as a mother, and walked straight out of the gate of the courthouse. After the divorce, my life started to get back on track. William's law firm was still in the financing stage. I invested a lot of money and became her partner. I also bought an office building in the best area of the capital city's downtown and established the second branch of the firm. While taking care of my pregnancy, I invited top global business school doctors to teach me online, and I also hired a professional manager to take Lucas's place. Lucas's talent was unmatched by many people. He had only been away for less than 3 months, and the performance of the Evelyn Group had almost declined in a straight line. Even for the product updates and iterations, there were many negative voices in the market. For an established enterprise like the Evelyn Group, the reputation was extremely important. I was so anxious that my hair was falling out, and I couldn't eat for several days. It really worried William. "How can you not eat? Even if you don't eat, my goddaughter still needs to eat." I stared at the company's financial statements and said with a worried face, "I haven't had much appetite recently." William had her own company, and her ability was much stronger than mine. She took the statement in my hand, glanced at it, and immediately frowned. Almost 8 billion yuan was lost in 3 months. "What's going on?" I pursed my lips and didn't say anything. But she obviously also knew. After being silent for a while, she said, "If it really doesn't work, ask your ex-husband to come back. I think he's quite willing. Don't refuse right away. Professional matters should be left to professional people. Anyway, all these things belong to you now. If he comes, he'll just be working for you. With me here, I'll keep an eye on the company's money for you, and he won't be able to embezzle it. Some men are just like that. I think he's a typical example of only knowing how to cherish something after losing it. Anyway, he has feelings for you now. He has talent and strong ability. What love, hate, and grudges are there? Money is more important. Just call him over, and then learn from him. When you can handle things on your own, you can just kick him out." To be honest, those business school doctors can't compare with him. No one will think they have too much money. For those successful doctors, all they do is just establish some business schools or management consulting companies. After all, what they teach is still just theoretical stuff. It's the same as teaching in training institutions. They teach some general knowledge. They haven't actually delved deeply into various industries. What you can learn from them is just some superficial knowledge, and in fact, you can't even use it in daily life. Many things need to be learned, practiced, reviewed, and summarized through actual experience. We women should not only learn to be independent but also learn to leverage resources and coexist. Everything can be used by us. If I had such an ex-husband, I would definitely squeeze out all his value. You don't love him anymore. Now, no matter what he does, he can't hurt you. Just kick him away when he's no longer useful. William's words had a great impact on me. After hesitating for 2 days, I still called Lucas. I didn't beat around the bush and directly told him my thoughts. There was no response for a long time. Lucas wasn't stupid, and he had also been reborn. With his ability, he definitely wouldn't be worse off than in the Evelyn group. If you don't want to. No, I'm willing, Evelyn. I'm willing. I'll go back tomorrow. Hearing Lucas's somewhat excited voice on the other end of the phone, I frowned and said, "You should call me Chairwoman Evelyn." "Okay, Chairwoman Evelyn. I'm 8 months pregnant now. Whether it's studying or company matters, I handle them online." On the first day Lucas returned to the company, he separated out the short video section and started developing short videos. Both he and I know how popular short videos will be in the future. I just didn't expect that he would start developing them now. I thought he was going to start his own business alone. In my imagination, we should have been in a life and death struggle. I never thought that after the divorce, we could still coexist peacefully. However, when I saw him, my heart wouldn't race anymore, I wouldn't feel inferior and nervous anymore, and I wouldn't consider whether he liked me or hated me. I began to act like a boss, and I was even happy about the performance that rose sharply because of his return. It seemed that we had switched positions. I found that he began to observe my moods and started to please me. He would even go halfway around the capital city just to buy the pastries I liked, spend a fortune to buy the albums I liked, and invite my favorite stage play actors for me. On the day I gave birth to Ava, due to the abnormal fetal position, I needed a cesarean section. He was sad for more than half a month because he couldn't sign on my surgical consent form. Even Julian and Ethan learned to give me gifts in various ways. These were all things I had expected before, but now looking at what they did, I felt nothing in my heart. Lucas still died young just like in the previous life. That fortunately, when he died, I had completely learned how to manage the company, analyze the market, and formed my own set of opinions in the new energy field. When I rushed to the hospital, he held my hand tightly. Through the oxygen mask, he called my name again and again, and his voice got lower and lower. Julian and Ethan covered their mouths and cried by the hospital bed, sobbing uncontrollably. I looked at him and raised a polite and distant smile. "You've been too tired all these years. Have a good rest." He looked at me struggling to say something, but in the end he didn't say it. He just shed tears from the corners of his eyes. After Lucas died, I buried his ashes next to Olivia and Emma. After Lucas died, Julian and Ethan seemed to mature suddenly. On Mother's Day they bought me a lot of gifts and also brought a lot for Ava, so many that I couldn't hold them all with both hands. Perhaps because they had just lost their father, they pinned all their feelings of admiration for their parents on me. They looked at the villa behind me with a certain expectation in their eyes. I knew that they wanted me to invite them in for a meal. I pretended not to understand and said, "It's getting late. You should go back early and be careful when it's dark." They left with disappointment. I carried the gift box in my hand and turned around to go back inside. When I passed the trash bin at the entrance of my house, I threw everything in my hand into it. Just after I threw them away, out of the corner of my eye, I saw 2 figures. When I turned around, I saw Julian and Ethan standing there. I didn't know when they had arrived. Each of them was holding a rough knitted scarf, obviously knitted by themselves. They looked at the gifts in the trash bin and then looked at me with the same sad eyes. I pursed my lips. After a long while, I said, "Since you've both seen it, you'd better not come again in the future. I still can't bring myself to like you." In fact, I even feel disgusted. Tears welled up in their eyes and they called me mom with quivering lips. But I ignored them and went inside and closed the door. They stood at the door for a long time and then left dejectedly. After that night, we never saw each other again. As for how they were doing, I'm not really sure. Anyway, Ava and I are living a very happy life. I was pregnant at the same time as the widow of my husband's comrade in arms. My husband felt sorry for her and her orphan child. Under the pretext of repaying the favor of his comrade in arms, he stayed by her side in the hospital ward and took care of her every day. On the day of childbirth, she gave birth to a healthy boy, while I gave birth to a child with cerebral palsy. My mother-in-law cursed me, calling me a jinx. Because of this, my husband insisted on divorcing me and kicked me out of the house. I had to work while raising my child with cerebral palsy. Before I reached the age of 30, half of my hair had already turned white. However, the child with cerebral palsy resented me for not buying him a cake and pushed me into the traffic. Just before I died, that woman came to me with her child to show off. You look so pitiful like this. Your husband and child belong to me now. I will live a happy life in your place. That's when I learned that my husband had secretly exchanged my newly born healthy child in order to prevent his comrade in arms widow from being stimulated. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back on the day when I gave birth on the same day as her. My husband was sitting by the bedside of his comrade in arms widow, Sophia, carefully blowing on the hot soup. Sophia, I made you some chicken soup. I specifically skimmed off the oil on top. Eat more. You're too thin. Julian, this isn't really appropriate, is it? Emma is watching. She's also pregnant. You should go take care of her instead. Although Sophia said this, she didn't reject him at all. She leaned forward and drank the chicken soup that the man fed her. From time to time, the look she gave me was filled with a bit of pride and provocation. Looking at the two of them who seemed more like a couple than my husband and I knew that I had been reborn. Reborn on the very day when I gave birth on the same day as Sophia. However, I didn't expose their hypocritical and ugly faces on the spot. Instead, I smiled and spoke in a sarcastic tone. You're being too polite. People who don't know might think I'm the one interfering in your relationship. Sophia's smile froze on her face, and she looked towards the hospital corridor with a guilty conscience. She didn't say anything, but my husband Julian frowned and started to scold me. Why are you being so unreasonable again? I'm just taking care of her on behalf of my deceased brother. Giving birth is like walking half a step into the gates of hell for a woman. She's a woman with no one to rely on. What would she do without a man to take care of her? Besides, don't you forget who Sophia's husband died for. One should know how to be grateful. People with a dirty heart see everything as dirty. I sneered in my heart. Julian, Sophia's husband, and my brother were all soldiers. In my previous life, Julian reminded me again and again that Sophia's husband had died on the front line to protect my brother. At that time, I specifically inquired, and my brother's barracks had indeed participated in that battle. So, I believed it without a doubt. Out of guilt, I always gave in to Sophia in our daily life. Every time we killed a chicken or a duck at home, Julian and my mother-in-law would save the drumsticks for Sophia and let me eat the chicken feet and duck feet. Although I was sad, I turned a blind eye. However, in the eyes of others, this became the reason why everyone later called me a jinx. In everyone's opinion, Julian's family provided for me, but I failed to give birth to a healthy child. Because of this, my mother-in-law kicked me out of the house. When my husband Julian, whom I had been with day and night, insisted on divorcing me, no one stood up to speak a word in my favor, just because I gave birth to a child with cerebral palsy. In the following years, I wasn't without the thought of committing suicide. But every time I looked back at the child with cerebral palsy who was grinning and drooling at me, I gritted my teeth and persevered. Unexpectedly, once I didn't buy him a cake, and he held a grudge against me and pushed me into the traffic. Just before I died, Sophia came to me with her child to show off. That's when I realized that the child I gave birth to wasn't a child with cerebral palsy at all. The child with cerebral palsy was Sophia's child, and I gave birth to a healthy and normal boy. After I died, my resentment was so deep that my soul lingered and was trapped by Julian's side. That's when I learned that the plan to swap the children came from his mouth. He had already been having an affair with Sophia in private. During the prenatal checkup, it was found that Sophia's child had problems. He was afraid that Sophia would be stimulated, and raising a child with cerebral palsy required a lot of money and energy. He didn't want to be a fool, and Sophia also acquiesced to this plan. Later, they joined forces and made a big fuss, saying that my genes were bad and I gave birth to a child with cerebral palsy, which led to my brother's arranged marriage being called off. My parents were poor, and they couldn't bear it any longer. They suddenly died of a heart attack. When my brother came back from the army, he found that his world had collapsed. That's when I also learned that Sophia's husband's death had nothing to do with my brother. But without his family, my brother no longer wanted to live and ended his own life with a knife. Julian and Sophia, however, used the hard-earned money of my parents and the military pay that my brother had risked his life for to live a prosperous life. Fortunately, God gave me a chance to be reborn. I let out a long sigh of relief, placed one hand on my swollen belly, and my eyes were filled with determination. In this life, I will never make the same mistakes again. Even if I have to risk my life, I will protect my child and my family. I tried my best to control my emotions, and my mind was working rapidly. In my previous life, since it was my first time giving birth and I had no experience, I was somewhat scared and worried. A few days ago, I had suggested to Julian that my parents come to the hospital to accompany me during childbirth. But he accused me of being unreasonable. He said, "Your parents are old and it's tiring for them to travel back and forth. Aren't you afraid of tiring them out? If something happens, I won't be responsible. If you want them here, you take care of them yourself. And don't you dare give them the money for the train tickets. Your parents didn't do anything when you were born, and now they want to take money from me." At that time, I was short of money and felt extremely ashamed. Now that I think about it, he was clearly worried that if my parents came, their plan to swap the children wouldn't be able to succeed. I glanced at the clock on the wall. According to the time, I would go into labor around 8 o'clock tonight. There were still more than 5 hours until I gave birth. I had to send the news that I was about to give birth to my parents in the countryside before the labor started and let them arrive before 8 o'clock. I came to my senses and said, "Husband, the smell of the disinfectant in the ward is too strong. It's making it hard for me to breathe. I'm going out to get some air and I'll be back soon." I thought I would have to argue with him, but I overestimated my position in Julian's heart. He didn't even turn his head and just waved his hand impatiently. "You're so troublesome. Go and come back quickly." He didn't even give me, a pregnant woman with a big belly, a single glance. In the past, I would definitely have been sad and would have argued with Julian. But now, I just let out a cold laugh. I walked out of the ward and went to the front desk in the hospital lobby and dialed the public phone in the village. When I heard the familiar voice of Uncle Village Chief, the operator, for a moment, the tears in my eyes almost welled up. I took a deep breath, quickly adjusted my emotions, and briefly explained the situation. "Uncle Village Chief, it's Emma. I'm going to give birth today. Please help me tell my parents to come to the county hospital before 8 o'clock tonight. I have something urgent to talk to them about." Uncle Village Chief could tell how urgent I was and agreed repeatedly. After hanging up the phone, I finally let out a sigh of relief. I hope my parents can make it. After thinking for a moment, I decided to make 2 plans. I found the nurse in the inpatient department, and asked her to help me change to another ward. In this life, as long as I'm not in the same ward as Sophia and we give birth at different times, I want to see how they can still swap my child. Just as I was about to successfully complete the check and procedures, suddenly a voice came from behind me. "Daughter-in-law, so you're here." I turned around and looked at my mother-in-law, whose smile didn't reach her eyes, and I knew something was wrong. In my previous life, my mother-in-law heard about Sophia's family background and learned that Sophia's mother had remarried a 60-year-old man in the city. The old man's family owned a big factory, and since there was no son to inherit the family business, most of the family property would probably fall into Sophia's hands. Because of this, my mother-in-law fawned over Sophia in every way. She had played many dirty tricks in the matter of swapping the children and coveting my family's property. Sure enough, when my mother-in-law saw the ward change procedures that hadn't been completed on the nurse's desk, she suddenly started wiping away tears and choking up. Julian said that you felt the ward wasn't well ventilated and you were uncomfortable. I thought you would come here. It's all because our family is poor and can't give you a separate ward. But don't worry, even if I have to sell everything we have, I'll give you a good environment for giving birth. My mother-in-law's crying attracted a lot of people. I wanted to explain, but my voice was drowned out by everyone's accusations, saying that I was being too unreasonable. Even the nurse said, "Your mother-in-law treats you like her own daughter, and has done her best for you. Why are you so unreasonable and spend money recklessly? The housing situation is tight now, so we won't change the ward for you." Looking at the ward change form that the nurse scribbled up and threw into the trash can, my heart sank to the bottom instantly. At the same time, I didn't miss the proud smile on my mother-in-law's face. "Ma, the doctor said that your baby could come at any moment. Stop being willful. This time, your mother-in-law doesn't blame you. Just lie down now and save some strength for giving birth." In the ward, my mother-in-law helped me onto the hospital bed. My wrist hurt terribly from where she was pinching it, and I couldn't move. Looking at the smile on her face that didn't reach her eyes, a sense of despair gradually enveloped my whole body. Could it be that even in this new life, I still can't change the tragic fate of my previous life? Just as I was racking my brain for ideas, suddenly a wail rang out. My stomach hurts so much. My wandering thoughts were pulled back, and I looked in the direction of the sound. It turned out that, unlike in my previous life, I didn't make a jealous and angry scene when Julian was feeding Sophia chicken soup, spilling the soup all over the floor. So in this life, Sophia drank all the chicken soup, which caused her to go to the toilet frequently. In my previous life, when Sophia went to the toilet, my mother-in-law carefully waited on her, and there was no accident. But just now, because my mother-in-law went out to look for me, and Julian couldn't take care of her openly, there was no one to attend to Sophia when she went to the toilet. Sophia didn't notice a puddle of water in front of the toilet, stepped on it, and fell hard. Looking at the amniotic fluid flowing from Sophia's lower body, I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of joy in my heart. If Sophia gives birth ahead of time, does that mean I can stagger our delivery times, and my child won't be swapped? However, the joy in my heart didn't last for more than a few seconds before it was shattered by my mother-in-law's cold words. "Doctor, this is an auspicious time. My daughter-in-law should also give birth at this time." After saying that, my mother-in-law gave Julian a meaningful look. Before I could react, they held me down together. My mother-in-law shouted loudly, "Doctor, we are the pregnant woman's family members. We request an oxytocin injection." I shook my head vigorously and resisted. "Help, someone, no, I don't want it. You can't go against the will of the parturient." I knew all too well what this injection meant. Seeing that someone had heard the commotion and was standing outside the door, my mother-in-law deliberately shouted loudly, Mom knows you're scared, but giving birth is an experience that every woman has to go through. Stop being so willful. Mom has already arranged for the best doctor to deliver your baby. Julian and I will be by your side later. Nothing will happen." The people at the door saw that it was just a minor family conflict and didn't pay much more attention, and they dispersed. Watching the doctor approaching me step by step with the oxytocin injection, my heart was in a frenzy. I don't know where I got the strength, but I hit my mother-in-law with my head and took the opportunity to shake off Julian's restraint. I gritted my teeth and endured the pain on my forehead, and quickly went to the window and opened it. A gentle breeze blew, which made me regain some of my calmness. My parents definitely can't make it here in time now. I have to find a way to save myself, looking at Julian and the others who were about to pounce on me. I used all my strength to climb to the edge of the window. Amid the exclamations of everyone, I looked at Julian and the others fiercely. Don't come any closer. Step back. I won't take that oxytocin injection. Put the injection aside, or I'll jump down from here right away, and both the mother and the baby will die. Mom, you won't be able to have a chubby grandson either. And if something really happens to me, it will be the doctor and the hospital whose reputation will be damaged. You all better think it through. Perhaps my imposing manner intimidated them. Julian and the others were all stunned in place and didn't dare to come forward. I also secretly let out a sigh of relief. However, at this moment, a sharp pain of uterine contraction suddenly came from my lower abdomen. Because of my strenuous exercise and nervousness, I actually went into labor ahead of time. When I was in so much pain that I couldn't move, Julian and my mother-in-law exchanged a glance, quickly took me down from the window, and together with the doctor, they sent me to the front of the delivery room. They wanted to follow in, but were stopped by the doctor. This is the delivery room. No one except medical staff is allowed to enter. Hearing this, my tense heart relaxed a little. It seems that the doctors are not in cahoots with Julian and the others. But the next second, when I saw the familiar eyes of the midwife, a strong premonition rose in my heart. So they were so confident. The midwife in the delivery room turned out to be Julian's sister, Luna, the sister-in-law whom I had doted on like half of my own sister. At this moment, as the door of the delivery room slowly closed, the despair in my heart gradually eroded my whole body. Julian and the others were reluctant to spend even half a cent on me. They didn't give me an epidural. I fainted from the pain during the delivery process. Before falling into the darkness, a strong sense of sadness filled my entire heart. I'm sorry, my child. I'm sorry, Mom, Dad, and my brother. Even in this new life, I'm still useless and can't change my tragic fate. Time passed quickly. I don't know how long it had passed. In a trance, I seemed to hear a loud banging sound on the door. Then, an extremely familiar voice came from outside the delivery room. Open the door. We want to accompany our daughter during the delivery. It was my parents. In a daze, I perked up. Could it be that I was hearing things? The next second, the taste of blood on my tongue made me instantly regain my clarity. The joy that ignited in my heart couldn't be hidden anymore. It wasn't an illusion. My parents had arrived in time. With my parents here, Julian and the others won't have a chance to swap the child, and the tragic fate of my whole family and my previous life will be rewritten. I suppressed my excitement and tried my best to prop myself up to look through the gap in the curtain towards the delivery room door. Coincidentally, at this moment, the door of the delivery room was broken open. The slightly hunched figures of my parents rushed in. Their anxious eyes searched for me in the delivery room, and they shouted my nickname loudly with a trembling voice. When I met their bloodshot and worried eyes, at this moment, the tears that had been welling up in my eyes couldn't be held back any longer and immediately streamed down my face. Mom and Dad, I'm here. I thought my voice would be very loud, but when I heard my hoarse and weak voice, I was slightly taken aback. Then I realized that because of the delivery, I had exhausted all my strength. However, there is a special connection between a mother and her daughter. My parents accurately looked in my direction through the curtain. My dear daughter. My parents called out and were about to run over, but before they could get close, they were stopped coldly by Luna. These two family members, this is the delivery room. Medical disturbances are not allowed, and the pregnant woman is in labor. Please leave immediately, or I will call the security guards to kick you out of the hospital. My parents are farmers, honest and simple. They were intimidated by Luna's words and hesitated to stop in place. At this time, Luna gave a meaningful look to the doctor and the nurses who had come to their senses, signaling them to jointly drive my parents out of the delivery room. Seeing that my parents were about to be forced out of the delivery room by Luna and the others, ignoring the tearing pain in my lower body, I used all my strength to shout. Mom and Dad, don't listen to Luna. Don't leave. Julian and the others want to let Luna secretly swap my child after I give birth. Ma, you're talking nonsense. Julian's thoughts were exposed, and his face turned red. Father-in-law and mother-in-law, listen to my explanation. There must be some misunderstanding here. You come out with me first, and I'll explain it to you. As he said that, Julian's hands were about to pull my parents out. But before his hands could touch my parents, they were coldly shaken off by my parents. Get out of the way. Our daughter won't lie to us. After our daughter gives birth safely, we'll settle the score with you later. My parents, who were just about to step out of the delivery room at this moment, their anger turned into strength. They actually pushed Luna and the others away and made a way through. However, just as they were getting very close to me, seeing that their plan was being disrupted, Julian and my mother-in-law rushed out in a hurry, grabbed my parents, and pushed them to the ground. My parents were so worried about protecting me that they fell heavily to the ground unexpectedly. Mom and Dad, my heart ached sharply, as if it were bleeding. Hearing my cry, my parents gritted their teeth and managed to stand up, and they fought desperately against Julian and the others. But after all, my parents were no match for Julian and the others. I watched as the door of the delivery room slowly closed again, and my parents outside the door were shouting and struggling desperately. I clenched my fists, and 2 lines of tears mixed with blood quietly slid down my face. Even in this new life, even if my parents showed up, can't they change the tragic fate of my previous life? In a trance, I suddenly felt a pain in my arm. Luna actually took advantage of my being lost in sadness and told the doctor that my mood swings were too great and it would cause inconvenience during the delivery. She instigated the doctor to give me an anesthetic. I was just about to break free when my head spun, and with the darkness, I fell into deep despair. My child, don't take away my child. In the darkness, I had a dream about my previous life and suddenly woke up from the bed. It's okay, Mama. Don't be afraid. You and the baby are both safe. You gave birth to a chubby grandson for us. Look, my mother's gentle and kind voice rang in my ear. I saw my mother with a few wrinkles on her face, smiling and holding a chubby baby in front of me. At this moment, I didn't hear my mother's voice at all. My eyes were fixed on the baby in front of me, and I couldn't control the excitement in my heart anymore. I suddenly held the child in my arms. My little baby, it's so good that you're still by Mom's side. I gently stroked the child, and tears welled up in my eyes. After a while, I came to my senses and looked up at my parents with a puzzled expression. Mom, didn't you and Dad get driven out of the delivery room by them later? And the child? The child wasn't swapped, and I didn't think it was because Julian and the others suddenly had a change of heart. His whole family were demons who sucked human blood without leaving a trace. They definitely wouldn't give up if their plan wasn't completed. Something must have happened. My parents saw my confusion and told me what had happened later. It turned out that just as the delivery room door was closing, my brother appeared with a group of soldiers. It was a coincidence. Because of several military achievements, my brother is now a company commander and has recently been transferred back to our hometown to take up a position and build the hometown. My brother just got off the train today. The reason he showed up at the hospital was that all the staff needed to have a physical examination before going through the entry formalities. In the broadcast in the hospital lobby, my brother heard my name. Out of curiosity and worry, he came to the delivery room and saw the final scene. My brother rescued my parents from Julian's hands, and then asked about the specific situation. After learning about my experience, my brother's face darkened. He immediately led a group of soldiers to break open the door of the delivery room. Julian and the others still wanted to team up with Luna to play the same old tricks, but none of the medical staff present dared to step forward. They were all intimidated by the aura my brother exuded. My brother had no intention of letting Julian and the others off. He repaid Julian double for the bullying my parents and I had suffered. At first, Julian was still unyielding when he was beaten and shouted arrogantly. Julian said, "How dare you hit me? I'm Emma's husband and a team leader in the barracks." Aren't you afraid that I'll treat him badly in the future if you hit me? And as a soldier, you actually took the lead in causing a commotion in the hospital. Let's see how the higher-ups will punish you when this gets out. In response to him, there was only my brother's ruthless beating. Later, Julian was so scared by the beating that when he saw that my brother had no intention of stopping and learned about my brother's current status, he knelt on the ground, crying and nodding, and slapped his own face, begging for mercy repeatedly. When my parents finished speaking, they looked very disdainful and disgusted. I felt extremely satisfied when I heard this. Julian was just a bully who feared the strong and oppressed the weak. But in my heart, I was more touched, and I also felt a deep sense of guilt towards my brother. In my previous life, I didn't hear the news that my brother was coming to the count to take up a position, and I didn't know that my brother had been promoted. Now that I think about it, I'm afraid that in my previous life, I indirectly ruined my brother's future. In the end, my brother couldn't take up the position smoothly. It's my fault. I'm not good. I'm sorry for my parents, my brother, and my whole family. Mom and Dad, where's my brother? Your brother still has official business to attend to, so he went to deal with it first. He said he'll come to the hospital to see you tonight. By the way, my dear daughter, after all this has happened, what about you in the future? What about you and Julian? My mother looked at me with a pained expression at the end. I knew what my mother was thinking. I looked down at the sleeping child in my arms and said firmly, I want to divorce him. I won't agree to a divorce with you. Ma, I know you've been wrong today. I admit that Julian was temporarily blinded by greed and made a mistake. But he also had good intentions that led to bad deeds. He was thinking of you and felt that he couldn't repay the kindness of Sophia's late husband, so he did something wrong. Why do you have to file for divorce? After hearing that I wanted a divorce, Julian and my mother-in-law sang in unison. I admit that they know very well how to manipulate my character. This trick worked on me every time in my previous life. But they don't know that in this new life, I already know the whole story and the truth, and I've already seen through their hypocritical and ugly faces. But they don't know that my child is my bottom line, and I won't allow anyone to touch it. When my parents heard their words, and were all very puzzled. I let out a cold snort. Julian and the others were vague in front of my parents. Were they afraid that the truth would be exposed by my parents? The more they didn't dare to talk about things openly, the more I wanted to bring them out into the open. In front of everyone, I said coldly, what kindness can't be repaid? Do I need to swap my own child with Sophia's? You know very well in your heart. Why ask? Julian said impatiently. Julian was certain that I didn't dare to tell the truth. But he miscalculated. After experiencing life and death, now with my family by my side and my child in my arms, I'm not afraid of anything. Are you talking about the cause of Sophia's husband's death? Are you saying that her husband died in battle to protect my brother when my brother was surrounded on all sides on the battlefield? What do you mean he died for me? It was already evening, and my brother came to visit me and happened to hear this. The moment Julian saw my brother appear, he was indignant 1 second ago, but the next second, he was like a punctured balloon, deflated, and didn't dare to look my brother in the eye. My mother-in-law tried her best to change the subject, but my brother wouldn't let them get away with it. I was indeed almost caught in the enemy's trap on the battlefield some time ago, but my brothers and I fought back together and finally escaped danger and counterattacked the enemy. But there were no brothers who died in battle. Sister, didn't you read the letters I wrote to you? I shook my head and glanced at Julian out of the corner of my eye, who lowered his head guiltily. At this moment, what else didn't I understand? In my previous life, I would write letters to my brother and parents from time to time. But every letter I sent seemed to sink into the sea, and I never received a single reply. Now it seems that it was Julian's doing. He deliberately made me think that my family was alienating me. So in my previous life, even though I was kicked out of Julian's house and lived a hard life, I never thought of telling my family and asking them to share my worries. In the end, Julian and the others took advantage of this and used my parents' and brothers' love for me to make them either die or live in poverty. I hate them so much. What's the name of Sophia's husband? My brother asked. Julian, my brother is asking you a question. I thought for a moment and suddenly realized that I had never heard the name of Sophia's husband before. I only knew that such a person existed. Julian stammered for a long time but couldn't say anything definite. At this moment, a bold guess popped into my mind. Is there no such person at all? Sophia is actually your mistress that you kept. In order to let her live in the unit housing legally and under the same roof as us, Julian, you really went to great lengths to make up such a lie. After I died in my previous life, it wasn't that I didn't notice some clues. It's just that I was overwhelmed by great grief and didn't bother to think about it. The problems that I couldn't figure out before can all be explained now. You're talking nonsense. Sophia's husband did die in battle. I won't allow you to insult Sophia. When Julian saw that he couldn't pretend anymore, he simply stopped pretending and said, I can agree to divorce you, but the child is the flesh and blood of the Julian family, and must stay in the Julian family. My mother-in-law also frowned and acquiesced to his approach. I was half lying on the bed, holding the sleeping child in my arms, and sneered in my heart. After saying so many high-sounding words, I'm afraid this is the main point. Let me leave the child behind. The child I gave birth to can only take my surname. I endured so much hardship to give birth to this child after 10 months of pregnancy. Now that their plan to swap the child didn't succeed, and they can't do it secretly, they want to openly fight with me for the child. Let my child recognize the Dylans as parents and call Sophia mother in a legitimate way. My parents and brother also reacted and stood in front of my bed one after another. My brother said coldly, my sister is just informing you. Julian, I'll give you 3 days. You must go through the divorce procedures with my sister in 3 days. After all this happened, I completely fell out with Julian and the others. Julian and the others had already gone through the discharge procedures with Sophia and gone home. I was glad to have some peace and quiet. Now with my parents and brother here, I don't have to worry about Julian and the others brazenly taking the child away from me. Unless he wants to taste my brother's fist again. I just couldn't figure it out. I learned it from my parents that Sophia's child wasn't a child with cerebral palsy at all. It was a normal baby boy with sallow skin and a thin body. What was going on? Just as I was deep in thought, there was a commotion outside the corridor. Save the person. What are you all standing there for? You bunch of incompetent doctors. My wife was fine during the prenatal checkup. How could the child be a child with cerebral palsy? Even if it was, how dare you dispose of my child without permission? If anything happens to my wife now, I will definitely make sure none of you can live. The man roared angrily and pitifully. When I heard this in the ward, a bold guess flashed through my mind. I forced myself to get up and asked my parents to help me to the door of the operating room. Through everyone's discussions, I learned the general situation of the matter. It turned out that the man was from out of town and came to the county town on a business trip for a few days. Unexpectedly, his wife's labor started ahead of time during this period. While the man was just queuing up to pay the fee, when he came back, he was told that the child was a child with cerebral palsy and had died as soon as it was born and was privately disposed of by the doctor. His wife woke up and heard the earth-shattering news. For a moment, she couldn't think straight and jumped out of the window. Fortunately, the floor was low, and she was discovered early by kind-hearted people. Within half a day, the man lost his child, and his wife's life was hanging in the balance. He was on the verge of complete collapse. After a while, when the onlookers dispersed, I slowly moved my weak body forward. Brother, don't be too sad and worried for now. If I'm not mistaken, your child should still be alive. When the man heard my words, he suddenly raised his bloodshot eyes and stared at me intently. At the same time, I also got a clear look at the man's face. I was slightly taken aback. It wasn't for anything else. Although this man was just running a small business now, he would later become a renowned business tycoon in the city, with influence in both legal and illegal circles. He would use tough measures to expand his business and even develop it overseas. I didn't expect that Julian and Sophia were quite good at choosing. They actually picked him. What do you mean? I was brought back to my senses by the man's cold words and said, don't you think the whole thing is very strange? Your wife's pregnancy checkups were all normal. How could she give birth to a child with cerebral palsy? Just while you were queuing up to pay the fee, when you came back, you were told that the child was gone, and you didn't even get a chance to take a look at it. Brother, you might as well check if the child the doctor mentioned is yours. If not, come to my ward tomorrow, and I'll give you an answer. The man's eyes were dark and unclear. Just as he was about to agree, the door of the operating room opened. The person has been saved. Upon hearing this, the man burst into tears of joy. The next day, the man really came. The man was holding flowers and fruits in his hand, and his expression was no longer as gloomy as before. He said, Sister, thank you for your reminder yesterday. I checked as you said, and the dead child with cerebral palsy was indeed not my child. This black-hearted hospital actually engaged in such dirty business. I've already reported it to the police station. Brother, are you going to get your child back next? I asked softly. After getting a positive answer from the man, I smiled helplessly. To be honest, brother, the one who stole your child is my husband. No, it should be my ex-husband. I've already decided to divorce him. I smiled helplessly and briefly told him the whole story. If you trust me, after I go back tomorrow, I'll try to get a strand of the child's hair for you to do a paternity test. Then you can go and ask for the child. I've witnessed how brazen Julian and my mother-in-law are. If the man goes empty-handed, he won't be able to get the child back, and Julian and the others will even turn the tables on him. The man's expression was darkened and clear. Finally, after thinking for a moment, he said, Okay, I don't care about the grudges between you. I just want my child to be safe. Once the result comes out, my wife and I will go to get the child. Upon hearing this, I smiled bitterly. Brother, I'm not on their side. Otherwise, I wouldn't have told you all this. And I believe when you were checking, you heard that there was a party and causing a commotion in the hospital, right? And I also have a score to settle with them. Speaking of which, I want to ask you a few questions. I hope you'll answer them truthfully. After asking several questions, when the man went out, my brother, who was standing by my side, became angrier and angrier. Sister, when you were pregnant, was the child Sophia was carrying from the Mann family? The Mann family was the family that Sophia's mother married into in the city when she remarried. The family owned a large factory. I nodded. The questions that had been lingering in my mind and I couldn't figure out were finally answered during my conversation with the man just now. How could the child Sophia was carrying be a child with cerebral palsy? And why did they have to swap her own child? Thinking that the man was from the city and might know some things I didn't, I asked. Unexpectedly, the Mann family wasn't as Sophia had said, that there was no one to inherit the family property. On the contrary, the old man had a son in his 30s who had cerebral palsy. It was a shameful thing, so not many people knew about it. Immediately, I asked my brother to help me investigate, and the result was indeed as I had guessed. The old man of the Mann family had once declared at home that whoever could give birth to the first normal child for the family would inherit the family property in the future. Driven by greed, Sophia and her mother came up with the idea of having Sophia conceive a child with cerebral palsy. However, Sophia couldn't stand being alone and later had an affair with Julian. As for the so-called deceased husband who died in battle that Sophia mentioned, it was fake. It was just a way for her to get close to Julian. Sure enough, the scumbag man and the slutty woman were made for each other. Listening to my brother's words, a hint of cunning flashed in my eyes. Remembering that Julian had become a team leader in just half a year and that he had repeatedly boasted when he was drunk that he would become a senior officer in the future, I had some doubts. I immediately told my brother about my suspicions and asked him to help me investigate. Julian, are you ready? I'm going to give you a big surprise. After resting in the hospital for 2 days, I had recovered a lot and could walk around freely. On that day, accompanied by my parents, I went back to Julian's house. Firstly, it was time to settle the score with Julian and the others. Secondly, the matter of the child couldn't be delayed. I had to find an opportunity as soon as possible to get the child's hair for the man to do a paternity test. As I had expected, after we went back, Julian and the others were having dinner. They had a cold expression on their faces when they saw me and my parents. They just kept eating their food, and my mother-in-law was speaking sarcastically, saying things like their family never married women without good fortune, and all the kindness they had shown before was wasted on an ungrateful person. My parents couldn't stand anyone slandering me. They were so angry that they wanted to rush up and fight with them on the spot, but I stopped them. Yes, just before coming back, Julian came to the hospital and took me to the Civil Affairs Bureau to go through the divorce procedures. Speaking of this, I have to admire Sophia's ability to persuade. Before, seeing the attitude of Julian and my former mother-in-law, I was worried that they wouldn't agree to the divorce easily. Now it seems that Sophia must have coaxed them and promised them something. Benefits? Advantages? I'm really looking forward to seeing Julian and my former mother-in-law's faces turn livid with anger when they find out the truth. Sometimes, when you're in need, God will send you what you want. I was just worried that I wouldn't have a chance to get the child's hair. That night, when Sophia came to my room to show off with the child in her arms, I secretly plucked a few strands of the child's hair when she wasn't paying attention. The child, who had been asleep, immediately burst into tears. Sophia looked at me warily and said, "Mnema, what are you up to? I'm telling you, Julian has already promised to marry me. You can just wait to be left alone." Oh, now that I had already got the hair, I responded casually. Sophia's anger seemed to have hit a soft spot, and she immediately lost the interest in showing off to me. She turned around and left with the child in her arms. I asked my mother to send the hair to the man overnight. The man asked my mother to tell me that he would bring his wife to ask for the child back the next day. I had a dreamless night. The next day, I was woken up by the noise. When I got dressed and came out, seeing the people around me pointing and talking about me, I understood what Sophia had meant by her words last night. Before I came, Julian and the others had spread rumors about me in the military dependents compound, distorting the truth. They said that I was promiscuous during pregnancy, and that the child wasn't from the Julian family, which was why he wanted to divorce me. People can't tolerate even a speck of dirt in their eyes. They were indignant towards me at the moment. Looking at the people in front of me and remembering my previous life, a sarcastic smile curved up on my lips. I wondered if these people would be so ashamed that they would want to dig a hole and crawl in when they found out the truth. "You're lying. It's clearly you, Julian, who had an affair, and it was my daughter who filed for divorce." My parents were so angry that they retorted. Looking at Julian's smug expression, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Me having an affair? That's ridiculous. Julian, don't you think you're some kind of hot commodity that everyone wants? Little do you know that when you were keeping a mistress, you were also someone else's lover kept outside." "What do you mean?" Julian stared at me angrily. I didn't answer because he would soon find out. The man really kept his word and came to the door with the police. Julian and the others, who had been full of confidence and shouting just a moment ago, turned pale as soon as they saw the man's face clearly. The onlookers all showed signs of doubt and didn't dare to make a sound. The police ignored everyone's expressions and got straight to the point. "You are Julian, Sophia and the others, right? Someone has reported you by real name for swapping children and harming lives. Come with us. This is the evidence." As he spoke, he took out two paternity test reports and the confessions of Luna and other medical staff involved in the incident. The moment Julian saw the evidence and clearly saw the information about Sophia and the mentally disabled child of the Mann family on the other paternity test report, his face instantly turned pale. He clenched his fists tightly. He had been cuckolded, and what's more, by the mentally disabled child of the Mann family. In an instant, he felt humiliated. Julian rolled his eyes a few times and was the first to react. "Comrade police officer, is there some misunderstanding? I have no kinship with Sophia." How could I collude with her? You must have made a mistake. If it was proven Rue, his current status would be lost. This position as a team leader was hard-won after he had spent a lot of financial resources and energy. At this moment, when asked to choose between Sophia who had cuckolded him and his status, he naturally chose the latter. At this moment, Julian's mother also reacted. Her legs trembling, she nodded in agreement repeatedly. Sophia wasn't stupid. Seeing this scene, she knew she had been abandoned. Sophia was furious. She had given Julian a lot of benefits over the past year. Julian was able to firmly secure his position as team leader in a short period of time, and she had contributed to it. Ignoring the presence of the police, she rushed up to Julian and choked his neck with both hands. No kinship. When you were being affectionate with me, Julian, you didn't say that. You said you were tired of Emma's rigidity and wanted to marry me. The idea of swapping the children was also yours. Fine, now that you're shifting the blame onto me, since you don't want me to live, you won't live either. When Julian's mother saw her precious son's face turn red from being choked by a woman, she also joined the fight. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, blushing with shame and not daring to meet my gaze. In the end, Sophia couldn't withstand the beating from Julian and his mother. She soon lost and lay on the ground covered in injuries. Julian, looking disheveled, came up to the police and offered them a few cigarettes. Comrade police officer, don't listen to this crazy woman. There's no such thing at all. The police officer didn't take the cigarettes and said indifferently, the evidence is sufficient. Julian, are you questioning our police work? After saying that, he gave a signal to the police officers behind him. Seeing that the police weren't swayed by his tricks, Julian stepped back repeatedly to avoid being arrested. At the same time, he shouted loudly, "You can't arrest me. I'm a team leader in the military. On what grounds are you arresting me?" At this moment, the people led by my brother also arrived. After investigation, Julian has seriously violated laws and discipline. The organization will dismiss your current position and deprive you of your political rights for life. Julian, please come with us. This piece of news was undoubtedly a heavy blow to Julian. Julian was in a daze and murmured, shaking his head, "Impossible. I didn't do it. You can't take me away." At this moment, the dazed Julian didn't notice that Sophia had pushed his mother aside and was ready to pounce on him. By the time he reacted, he had already been knocked down by Sophia. He had been standing on the side close to the outside of the corridor. With this pounce, both he and Sophia fell off the corridor. The ground downstairs was made of cement, and the distance from the 5th floor was enough to kill them both. Julian's mother looked at this scene, felt a dizzy spell in her head, and fainted from a stroke. She died not long after being hospitalized. A few days later, when I heard the news, I felt calm in my heart. Evil deeds will be punished. This is what Julian and the others deserved, and I, with my son, will teach him to be an honest and kind person.